Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ask an Expert. And today we're joined by Amy Bray. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you doing?
And Amy, you are the founder of Another Way, an organization which is engaging young people with, I guess, climate action and kind of all kinds of aspects of the climate and nature crisis. I wondered, kind of, do you want to explain a little bit more about how you've come to be where you are now and kind of with the organization?
Sure, yeah. Well, my journey started quite a long time ago now when I was at school myself, and I've always had a very strong connection to nature. I always wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a child, and growing up, I learnt more about what is happening to our world, especially around plastic pollution and climate change, and all the threats that our oceans face. Um, and I really wanted to do something about it. I think because I just felt very frightened that the planet that I love wouldn't exist as I knew it when I was an adult. So I started campaigning in my teenage years, things like joining Greenpeace campaigns or writing to my MP, phoning supermarkets. Um, and I actually organised the first ever youth-led climate march in the UK back in 2016 when I was 14 years old. And only 50 people turned up to that march. But a couple of years later, millions of young people were striking around the world. So it was really special being at that kind of forefront of youth climate action, I think. Um, and I had my own kind of epiphany that actually, while I was asking governments and businesses to change, I was still feeling very disempowered. And I think a large part of that I realized was that I wasn't living my life in a very sustainable way either. I was still using a lot of plastic. I was still flying on holiday with my family. So I actually challenged my family to go plastic free. And that opened a whole can of worms and led us on this adventure, basically, of trying to live with the most positive impact that we can. And I started using education as a means to help empower other people to do the same, starting around me in my school and giving assemblies, working with the management team to make the school plastic free. And one thing led to another, and it snowballed. And I remember sitting on the school bus Googling how to register a charity. And so when I was 16, back in 2019 now, I set up Another Way. And our mission broadened to empowering everyone to live with kindness towards our planet. And we really like to do that in hopeful and positive ways. So spreading hope through lots of fun activities, through bringing science to young people, and most importantly, focusing on solutions that everyone can do, both in their personal lives and collective action that we can do in our communities and campaigning governments and businesses to change as well. So yeah, we've been on a journey since then.
Mm,
We've planted 30,000 trees. We
wow.
set up two zero waste shops, and we've worked with about 10,000 young people now to inspire them through talks and workshops. And our latest project, Power of 10, which I'm sure I'll get into
Yeah, we'll talk
later
about it
on.
a bit more. Just in thinking about kind of the journey of Another Way, what do you want to touch on some of the highlights? Has there been a moment where you've thought, gosh, I could never imagine I'd be in that situation or speaking to this person or meeting this person or in this certain place? I'm sure you've kind of gone, traveled and visited places because of the organization.
Yeah, sure. I'll pick on a couple. So, I think one moment that I was really proudest of is was at an event that we organised called Another Wainwright Day back in our launch year. I set up the charity in Cumbria, and we had a very strong community there of people who were passionate and who are trying to do amazing things. But I felt that this community wasn't being celebrated and wasn't connecting with each other. So we organized a crazy event to get about 600 people to climb all of the 215 Wainwright Mountains in the Lake District. And on the same day, at the same time, and at the top, they would do an activity to raise awareness about climate change, and take up these bandanas as well. So everyone would sign them on the way with pledges. Um, And the day before the event, there was an incredible storm. It was in August, but there were 80-mile-an-hour winds. But even so, people got out and climbed the mountains, and we got photos from all of the summits. And it was just such an incredible display of solidarity and unity and connection that people have. And afterwards, we all came together at a village hall for a celebration. And I think I was very proud that I had kind of nurtured this community that motivated people for quite a long time afterwards, I think. A couple more recent ones. I found myself in t number 10 at Downing Street last year,
Hmm.
a lesson on trees to the Prime Minister's wife and a load of
Okay.
primary school children.
Wow.
So that was an experience for sure. And that came off the back of getting the Prime Minister's Point of Light Award for my work. So that was a pretty cool honor.
Mm,
Yeah, and then more recently still, I went to New York for Climate Week, which was a big decision for me because I haven't flown for 7 years.
mm,
But it was so amazing to be in a room full of global activists from around the world and speaking to some of my lifelong heroes who are just incredible advocates for Indigenous communities, for Global South communities in climate justice. And hearing their perspectives was so humbling and made me realize that we are part of this wider community.
mm.
So those are a few.
Yeah, I think so much of what you talk about as well there is that relationships and connecting with people. I think is that something that you think is a really powerful, strong thread in everything that you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, community is the hidden key to solving the climate crisis because when we think that we're doing this alone, we lose all motivation and hope. And there was actually a study that came out that said that actually 69% of the world's population would put 1% of their own personal wealth to solving the climate crisis. That's a significant number of people. But when they asked people what they thought that number would be, people said about 49%. So we perceive the number of people who care about this to be much lower than reality.
Mm,
And that is really important because if you don't think your neighbors, the people around you, people in your country, or even people globally are acting on climate, you lose incentive to do so yourself. And it can feel very lonely and isolating as well, exacerbating the eco anxiety and climate grief that we all feel anyway.
mm.
So for me, getting together in community and celebrating that and bringing joy to climate action is absolutely critical. And I think the other part of this is recognizing that none of us have the key to solving the climate crisis alone. We all bring unique skills, talents, roles to the climate crisis and to solving it. And for me, I think of it like a kind of tapestry or patchwork of solutions. And we're all an individual piece within that patchwork. But we need artists, we need gardeners, we need teachers, we need doctors, we need thinkers and politicians. We need everyone to bring their unique position and roles and talents to be able to create this better world that we're all imagining.
And then I guess that lends itself really well to the power of 10. That I guess well, I'm guessing that's the premise of what the power of 10 is trying to achieve with so much of this. But do you want to talk a bit more about what the power of 10 is about?
Yeah, for sure. So, Power of 10 is named after our motto, which is that if one person was to spread a message to 10 people in one day, and the next day those 10 people each went and told 10 more, and so on, it would only take 10 days for the whole world to have been inspired. And for me, this is just such a powerful message because it shows, again, this power of community and the influence that we all have through just having conversations and inspiring the people in our lives to do something about it. And in my own journey and speaking to lots of other young people in schools around the UK, I found this common thread of feeling very lonely and isolated in trying to make a difference. So many schools struggle with engaging young people on climate. They might have an eco group that pops up, but in the vast majority of cases, it's really hard to get engagement with it. You have half an hour at lunchtime. They may be focused on the recycling and not high impact activities. Students might get bullied if they're in the eco group. They might drop out, and eventually they just lose motivation and kind of this hope that goes with trying to act on climate. Um, And then we also found that they really just don't know where to start. As a 12-year-old, you have no idea how to create a successful campaign or to run a community gardening event or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So I wanted to create a central hub where young people can have access to information and knowledge and support to create whatever campaign or project they want to do. And they have access to this peer supportive community so that they can feel valued and heard and they can learn from young people around the UK and eventually the world who are doing similar things and who are equally as passionate. Um, so we've created the first ever digital community for young change makers and for teachers. It's completely safeguarded and moderated, but there are over 60 resources on there on how to take climate and nature action. Everything from planting trees at school to letter templates to write to businesses or guides on setting up and rebranding your eco group, or home challenges to take home to your family. Everything in between. And on there, they also have this forum so that they can start conversations with other young people. So we've had conversations, for example, on people struggling to talk to their families about climate and other people offering suggestions and support, or conversations on what are the biggest myths when it comes to climate change, or maybe what reusable products do you like best when it comes to your toiletries in the bathroom, or how do I go about giving an assembly to a local primary school? And this is so important because they're starting to have conversations and get support from people who care the same as they do. And it helps them to feel less alone and more heard. Um, and on the app as well, we have a new events calendar, which is super exciting. So we're trying to bring together all the opportunities and events that are offered from loads of different charities around the UK that young people can get involved with. And we also have a digital awareness pack for teachers to give their students inspiring lessons that are related to the curriculum on all of the different topics that we cover. So there's loads going on. We're using this web app as the central hub, and then we're also going into schools to run workshops. We're running regional festivals across the country, and launching the first ever teenage-led climate podcast as well. So there's loads going on under the Power of 10 banner, but it's super exciting to see it take off, and really just change the lives of so many young people.
Yeah, and I mean the platform itself is a really dynamic and kind of intuitive setup. And the thing that struck me as well, with all of the stuff that you've done across another way, is just the tone of the communication and it's fun and not too serious, but also just really supportive and yeah, that comes through that sense of wanting to connect people and support each other. So yeah, you say podcast. There's what else? I mean, are there anything kind of any other initiatives or anything else that you are focusing on in the near future?
Yeah, we're really trying to gamify a lot of our resources, which has been really fun. So we're working with all our home challenges. They now have puzzles or games in that young people can like stick on their fridge at home, to showcase their progress. So those are now going to be launched on the app. We're also working on a careers pack.
Hmm.
So that's being dropped in the next few weeks on the app, and we have a careers guide in there with lots of different advice for students on how to go into a green career, and then career case studies as well, which try to showcase a diversity of careers that can help climate and nature. Something we're also working on is our eco anxiety pack and workshop. So we already have several resources on the app to support young people with mental health. Um, but again, there's a few new resources that we're releasing there, and building our events and opportunities calendar on there as well. And then we've just launched our workshops nationally as well, which is super exciting. So we can actually come into schools around the country to inspire students to care, to take action, and empower them with tangible climate projects that they can start in their schools. And that's something we've just had great success on. I think we're quite unique because we're a youth-led charity, so that's pretty inspiring to a lot of young people. Um, and also, I think we've just kind of found that key of how to really engage young people on this issue and make it cool and fun and quirky, which is so important, I think. So yeah, workshops nationally. We'll also be holding our next Power of 10 festival in Cornwall and one in the West Midlands, hopefully coming up.
Oh, cool. That sounds really exciting. And I guess so much of what you've mentioned there is relevant for teachers. You know, it's useful for them in terms of their teaching and also for them to support the students that they might be working with and to link them to. But it's just to finish, is there anything, a piece of advice or something you think should be a priority for teachers or just, kind of, yeah, if you could speak to teachers, what might you say?
I think I'm very aware that teachers are have so little time to do this. And so often in my experience, it's one really passionate teacher who is trying to set up an eco group and support their students, which is amazing, and we need you. But I think there is so much support out there now for young people and for teachers to make this easier. So I think really harnessing that support that's out there, whether it's small local charities, whether it's national charities offering resources, um, ones that help you with your climate action plan with your school, or things like Power of 10 that can really support your students, make them feel heard, and give them that kind of individual community platform as well, so that it doesn't take up loads of teachers' time to actually engage them, but we can kind of help you do that. Um, and I would also say that making it fun, inspiring, and engaging is so important. Focusing less on sorting out the bins or doing the recycling, but instead doing cool things like fashion shows or um, trying to get solar panels on your school or planting trees. All of these things kind of raise the bar of what we're expecting from an eco group in school, and make it more kind of normalized across the whole school as opposed to just a few students then being bullied for what they're doing as part of the eco group. So I think celebrating and inspiring those students who really care is so important. And yourself too, because teachers are doing just an incredible job on this.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And that advice is perfect, really, really helpful. We'll make sure we link through to all of the websites and resources and things that you've mentioned. Yeah, thank you so much, Amy.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks so much for having me.